And a very good Monday afternoon, too.
Yeah,
Boy, I
it's
forgot what
Monday.
day it is.
It's your week right.
I got a little brain fog here. Ethan Glaich, Hazi Richardson. I'm, of course, David Mooradian. We don't have very many rundowns left. I think 3.
Ooh.
So Friday will be the penultimate show. But we're very much looking forward to this one because of how busy we are in the sports landscape right now. Ethan and I were at High Corbett Field on Saturday, and we were remarking to each other in between commercial breaks how busy the sports season is. It seemed like we had so much to get caught up with between covering the game we were at and also keeping up with the MLB, the NBA, the NHL. I mean, it was really absurd. And so let's keep up now. Let's get you caught up with what we've seen. First of all, and we don't have to start here. I'm just going to kind of go over where I think we're going to start and finish over the next hour. And but one of those things has to be the Boston Red Sox decision to part ways with their manager Alex Cora. So we're going to get into that probably around the bottom of the hour. And some of the teams you thought were going to do really well in the American League hasn't necessarily been the case. You look at the Astros, the favorite in the West. They're in last place behind the Athletics of all teams. The Red Sox are in last place in the American League East. The Tigers are in first place in the Central, which you had to expect, but their record, they're only a couple of games above 500.
They're only one.
Only one game above, so it really hasn't gone the way you would have thought. But, of course, it's only the end of April. There's a lot of baseball left. The one thing, or I guess the two things that are true are the Yankees and the Dodgers are doing just fine, and, of course, that's the expectation going into every season. I know Boston, without Cora, they're playing the Blue Jays, who won the American League last year, so that's a series.
And they've struggled this year,
That's what's
too.
fun. The Blue Jays, both Boston and Toronto, have been underwhelming, and they were the two teams that were challenging the Yankees last year in the East. Both of them made the postseason. So we're going to have a little baseball discussion, which is long overdue, at the bottom of the hour. We also have to talk about the NBA. The Rockets kept their season alive, but how did they fall down 3-0 in the first place? We have Houston expert Ethan Glaich in the booth, so we'll certainly get to that. The Knicks and the Hawks, 2-2. It's been a really compelling series, but New York by far the better team in Game 4. They've been the better team throughout the series. They've lost their 2 games by a combined 2 points, where the Knicks' 2 victories, I think, were both by double digits. So there has been some contrast there. We'll get into that series. Cleveland is 2-2 with Toronto, which I feel pretty good about because I have been telling Ethan all year long, I just don't see how this Cleveland team is that much better than the ones that have come up short in the past. Adding James Harden, to me, didn't move the needle. That seems to be the case. I'm sure they'll get past Toronto, but just the fact that that series is 2-2 is interesting and underwhelming and a disappointment for the Cavaliers. The Celtics appear to be in good shape. I don't think either one of us were really building up the 76ers with or without Joel Embiid. It was an exciting, let's call it 4 minutes with Embiid yesterday, and then all of those reoccurring issues with Embiid came to fruition. His conditioning, his chemistry with the team, his defense, which can be overly physical at times, and he wasn't sharp around the basket. His field goal percentage, I don't have it in front of me from the eye test. I don't think it was very good.
He was 9 for 21.
There you go. Nothing special, especially with the shots he takes. It's not like he's shooting from the outside. Did he even have more than a couple of three-point attempts yesterday, Ethan?
He shot 1 for 6 from 3.
Okay, so he was actually taking a few, but nonetheless, he's taking a lot of high percentage shots, 15 inside the three-point arc, not making enough of them. So Embiid, unimpressive in his return, not enough. The Sixers got hammered on their home floor. As far as I'm concerned, that series is completely over. Where I was, the other series that I wanted to talk about that I thought was interesting, of course, Minnesota and Denver is interesting because the Nuggets have been so horrible, but probably they're going to move on because of the injuries to the Timberwolves, but they've got to do it from back 3-1. Is the Spurs had quite a scare between the Wemby concussion protocol and the fact that Game 3 was really anybody's game. In Game 4, the Spurs had a lead, a sizable lead at the half, and the Blazers had a sizable lead at the half in Game 4, and I thought the Blazers played about as awful a second half as I've ever seen a team play with a lead at the break. Now, of course, somebody can play a terrible second half, but you were that bad in a game where you dominated and you played so well in the opening 24 minutes. Can you add up, Ethan, that second? You see, I don't have a computer in front of me. What was the second half score?
They scored 43.
43 points in the second half, and the Spurs had around 70, I think.
61.
It was 61 to 43. Yeah. Look worse than that. And that's with the Blazers kind of cutting it down at the very end. So they were not particularly good. It was a horrible second half for the Blazers, who, like I said, were in that game. They led at half. They were in Game 3, but they ended up getting swept on their home floor with Wemby not playing in Game 3, and he seemed to be just fine in Game 4. So that series is over at 3-1 San Antonio, but it was anything but over when they both flew from San Antonio to Portland. Now, let's start here because I think it's the most compelling. I want to talk about Minnesota, and I'm sorry for our listeners. I'm going to do my best to push through but I don't have my voice today. Minnesota and Denver. The Timberwolves are up 3-1. DiVincenzo's obviously out for the season with an Achilles. He's going to be lucky to start, at some point in 2026 in December or November next year, or next season, this year. They're down 3-1, and Edwards is likely not going to play for the rest of the series. Is there any way they can just win one of the last 3 games against Denver?
Yeah, I do. I mean, Denver's not a particularly good defensive team. McDaniel said it in his press conference. Ant's been going after them. So I'm not sold on their defense, and I think Ayo Dosunmu, who scored 43 points in last game, is the truth. I think he's an awesome player for Minnesota. They got a great steal in a trade at the deadline in him, and he's been a key piece into why they're up 3-1 in the series right now. I think that, even with these injuries, they're still going to be obviously putting in 100% effort, and they can still hit their shots like they have been all series. So I still think Minnesota should be the favorite. How heavy of a favorite? I'm not sure, with the likes of Ant being out and DiVincenzo as well, but I do think they still have enough pieces to get it done, especially when you need one. What do you think, Hazi?
I'm completely with you on that, Ethan. The Jaden McDaniels, and especially I think he's gotten into the head of the team. And I not only that, but I think you can finally see the weaknesses that maybe people have been talking about for years with Jokic, is just the defensive decline. And not only with just him, but with that whole starting lineup. I mean, it just feels like, they can all score, but I mean, when they can't all defend, they kind of have to score.
Mm-hmm.
So the issue is, at some point you are going to get a stop. The team either against you is going to get a stop, or you just have to do something to get a stop by yourself. So, and this isn't, again, you aren't playing the 2023 Lakers, the 2024 Lakers, where you can score as many and then they score and then you just get the ball last. You have to defend, and even without Edwards and even without Dante DiVincenzo, I still don't think that there's enough, at least defensively, for Denver to take this series.
Okay, so I have a question for both of you, because there's a good amount of series at 3-1 right now. We've got the Celtics, the Spurs, the Rockets,
right,
and the Timberwolves. So I want you guys to rank from 1 to 4 which of the series you think teams can come back and claw it to 7. We've got the T-Wolves, the Rockets, the Spurs, and the Celtics. 1 to 4, 1 being the most likely, 4 being the least likely. David, we'll start with you.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, the way I see it is you really have two series where it's possible and 2 where it's completely impossible. That's the way I would break it up. I give the 76ers and the Blazers no chance at all. The Blazers, you have to say, have a better shot, because I think consistently they've been in every game. But I don't see Boston or San Antonio being upset up 3-1. I mean, they're both a virtual impossibility to me. So if you want to put one of them at 3 or 4, it makes very little difference. I think it's not going to happen. I'm sure, Hazi, you don't disagree with that. I'd be surprised if you did.
Not at all.
And as far as Houston is 2, and of course Denver is number 1. Denver, it's not even close, really. I mean, the Nuggets, they're fully healthy. They're going to have 2 of the last 3 games on their home floor. If you looked on an online sports book, probably the series is pretty even between who's favored to win the series in 7 games. Denver, they're a 12-point favorite tonight. They're going to be a 12-point favorite if it goes 7 games or more. The challenge will be if Minnesota can get their home crowd behind them and play with belief, right? If the Timberwolves have the confidence and they believe that Edwards will be available in the second round, then they may play a very inspired brand of basketball and be able to defend their home court in a Game 6. I think that's possible. But it's just as likely that the Nuggets could be the favorite to win that series down 3-1 just because of the nature of the injuries. Their defense is going to have to step up. I thought it was inexcusable that it's not like Edwards went down, Ethan, in the fourth quarter or at the end of the game. He was unavailable for the majority of the contest. And DiVincenzo's Achilles popped early in the first quarter, I believe. And Denver defensively, you said it, they're not good on that end of the floor, and they couldn't get it done. So that'll be interesting. I think the Nuggets have to be the most likely by far. Houston's the better team. We all know that. But they have their limitations, and Durant was unavailable for 3 and 4. I haven't been huge on them all season. And the Lakers, they've done enough to win 3 of the first 4. They've been by far the more clutch team in close games. You have to think there's going to be another close game, Game 5, and it has to favor L.A. just from what we've seen in crunch time. So I don't think the Rockets are going to win that series, but it's more possible than the Blazers or the Sixers. Hazi, you can correct me if you disagree at all.
No, I'm with
You're
you
lockstep.
with that on. I'm with you with that on, David, because the thing is, the Rockets to me are a very great young team, and to me they've actually played better in this series in the the 3 games without Kevin Durant than they did in the 1. So I just also think, but again, the Lakers are going to have pieces back that they didn't have in Game 4, and one of those pieces being Austin Reeves. So I just feel like, and again, Reeves isn't, the end-all, be-all and the end of the equation, but I do feel like he's going to give them a significant impact, and especially when it comes to scoring, to take the load off of dudes like LeBron, dudes like Rui Hachimura, or even DeAndre Ayton, who we've even seen him step up throughout this series. So I just feel like the Rockets have the best chance out of all of them, to me, just because they're still playing like a team who isn't defeated yet. To me, when you look at Denver, I think they've already been beaten mentally. I think with Houston, there's still a chance because, they've been beaten, again, 3 games, but there's still the fight. The fight is still there. I feel like the fight is gone in Denver.
So I want to ask Ethan a quick question as I laid out. Do you disagree with my assessment of the series with LA and Houston that the Lakers have by far been the more clutch team in those critical moments? And why should a Houston fan or somebody who thinks they could win, why should they have confidence that will change for the remainder of the series?
Well, I think for one, the Rockets have played better through the first 3 quarters of the games without KD.
Right, but they haven't closed.
They haven't closed at all, and that just comes with a young team. I think that's going to be some growing pains that this team has, especially without a closer like Kevin Durant. The thing is I think without Kevin Durant being there, they started to swarm a lot more, a term used a lot around Houston. They started to play a lot better defense, and they were forcing turnovers. They were playing a lot faster without him. And the reason why I think a Houston fan would have hope, I've completely changed on Kevin Durant. I am not anywhere sold on him, anywhere as nearly as sold on him as I used to be. And I think part of the reason is because he's a ball hog. Yeah. I don't think let's say you go play pickup basketball and you're teamed up with a ball hog, are you going to try very hard?
No, it hasn't. That's the same problem with Harden. It has an effect on the rest of the team.
I think a ball hog type player has a big effect on the team. They don't play as hard on defense. They don't play as hard on offense because they're not getting their shares.
You have to play a team brand of basketball. Say what you will about the Celtics, right? And they've got to work through who is their star, right? But they've got 2. And when you have 2 in Brown and Tatum, there isn't that one kind of alpha presence and everybody answers to you. And they do, and when they won the championship, Boston played a beautiful team game. They take a lot of threes, but it's not one guy taking all the threes. They move the ball very well. Mm-hmm. And conversely, they play very team-oriented and aggressive defense. And that is what separates a team like the Celtics. It's why they're consistently performing in the playoffs from another team like Houston or a James Harden-led team of the past. The Warriors, the same story. The Warriors have Steph Curry. Yeah, of course, he's ball dominant, but he does a lot of his scoring off the ball, and they move the ball very, very well. The Spurs, who had a nice run, even the LeBron teams, they're able to move the basketball a lot better. It's a critical component. These isolation teams do very well in the regular season, consistently come up short in the playoffs, and I think part of it's exactly right, Ethan. You need that team buy-in on both ends, and I do think that there's a carryover offensively into how they align and how they perform on defense.
Another thing that I think goes into the Rockets here and this series is they've completely changed their game plan. At first, the Rockets were letting Kennard and Smart shoot, right? And they've been lights out.
Which isn't a terrible strategy. It obviously hasn't worked.
They've been lights out all series. So in Game 4, we made a complete switch of where we're not going to let them shoot. I think they hit 2 threes in this game. Let me check the box score.
Well, they had to. The Houston had to step in and say, all right,
they hit 3 threes. 2 of them were Dalton Connect. So the Rockets really limited them from behind the arc. Yeah. They hit 3 threes, or they hit 5. Excuse me. Nick Smith and Bronny James hit 1 as well. So 3 of their 5 threes came in trash time. What do you call garbage time?
Sure.
So the Rockets really limited their scoring ability, and they said we're going to let Ayton score inside, and it really worked for them. Ayton dominated. He had 20 and 10, but part of the reason why the Rockets dominated is because they didn't allow them to shoot the threes that they were allowing them to shoot in the first 3 games. So I think that's a plus as well to why the Rockets could make this comeback. I'm kind of talking myself into it, but it's 3-1. So, it's very unlikely, but with how they looked, I would be on the plus side of it.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, Ethan, they did a great job at stopping Cornet and Smart, especially from like just shooting in general. But the issue is now I feel like Cornet, there's now gonna be like at least 3 to 4 shooters out there every time for the Lakers. So the issue now just becomes, yeah, you gotta shut down Cornet and you gotta shut down Smart, but then like, what are you gonna? Well, not what are you gonna do to shut down Reeves, because I feel like that's an obvious answer too. But it's just like, now if the Lakers do catch on to the fact, well, we're not gonna let him shoot, do they now start with the back cuts again? Does the play go through LeBron again? So I think again there is a possibility and there is a shot. I'm not gonna sit there and count them all out because we've seen crazier things happen in sports. But it's just, again, each game, and that's what makes, I feel like, making a series like this so hard to win. Every game that there's gonna be adjustments made by both teams. So I think we just have to wait and see what the Lakers do.
100%, I agree with you. And they have one of, if not the best player of all time in LeBron James, and he's been doing it for years. Well, whereas we have a young team here, so it's.
Let's anticipate, perhaps, Ethan. You've been following the series very closely. Let's anticipate what those changes may be. So you saw in Game 4, Houston allowed Marcus Smart and others to, or didn't allow. They guarded them really tight, wanted them more to beat them to the basket, and they couldn't do it. And the Rockets came away with, it was about a 20-point victory in Game 4.
21.
So you have to know that the Lakers are aware of those changes. And what do you see happening in Game 5? Houston, you would have to think, is going to play the same, seeing that it worked. And what does LA think about doing to get back to their success of early in the series?
Well, I think LeBron James has to get to the basket. I think he's got to create his own shot more. He didn't do a very good job of doing that in Game 4. He had 9 assists, but he scored 10 points. In Games 1 through 3, he was over 20. So him getting to the basket and getting to his hook shots and his fadeaways, he's got to do that a lot more. When LeBron is ball dominant, the Rockets have to send multiple guys at him because he's so big and he can do whatever he wants on the ball. So that would be my answer to how the Lakers respond. Do either of you guys have any
Well,
difference?
I just have a quick question. So Luka, this is off topic. What's his story? He's just not going to play in this series? Is that a fact?
I think he's out for the whole series. It was announced
and if they
before
if
Game
they
2.
win against Houston,
he'll be back.
That's a fact. Okay, interesting. So with that, being the expectation, and LA is generally otherwise available. I don't know. I don't know what. I think you're right. I think it's going to have to be on LeBron. I mean, he's got to be their star. He's done a great job. I mean, he's played fantastic.
He's been
The
incredible.
production that he can have at his age. Now, I've always been on the Jordan side of the and we don't have time to do that conversation any justice. I've always leaned towards Jordan with a heavy emphasis on the word lean. I mean, really favorite Jordan. But what LeBron is doing in the later stages of his career and his ability to elevate in the postseason, it's remarkable. And I do think it is legacy altering. I think when the conversation's had in 20, 30 years, the person who stands up and points to what LeBron did at age 40 plus in the playoffs is going to have a really strong point to combat. And we're really seeing it in this series. So I do think that's worth mentioning. He's been terrific.
Yeah, David. Like, just to add on to what both you and Ethan are saying, I agree with the fact of just like getting him into the paint, getting him to where his bread and butter has been pretty much his whole career. But to me, I think the biggest thing for the Lakers coming into Game 5 is just Game 4. If this is a team that like is as injury riddled as they say, to me, I would be like, let's close out in 4. Get Reeves, more time to actually recover, come back for the next series, et cetera, et cetera. You didn't do it in Game 4. You're now gonna have to do it in Game 5. But the good news is you're back on your home floor. You are getting AR back. So to me, I think the killer instinct has to come back in Game 5, because to me it just was not there in Game 4.
No, it certainly wasn't, and it's easy to be complacent up 3-0. We'll see if they have that tendency. But Ethan, certainly you can criticize the urgency, but you can only put so much on effort and intensity. I mean, these are professional athletes. And Houston did make the necessary adjustments. They changed their scheme, and they were able to have success. It'll be curious. I mean, Redick has out-coached the Rockets coach.
Completely.
Who I think –
completely.
And Udoka, I think a lot of people – put in that upper echelon of coaches coming into the season, even after the regular season, that he's one of the league's premier coaches. And the evidence in that, Hazi, is with our Knicks. Then he was one of the coaches when New York parted ways with Tom Thibodeau that New York really courted and tried to get to break his contract and leave. And Houston, I believe, gave him an extension because of that. And so, James Dolan and those executives in the Knicks front office, they really felt strongly in Udoka, and he's been outcoached by Redick, I would say, handily, which has been surprising.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that. I mean, the Rockets have been through what has felt like multiple very bad losses, and part of it comes down to coaching. I think he's done a good job on his challenges and a good job on his timeout calling, but just coming in with the game plan of going to Kevin Durant and then nobody moves when he gets doubled,
right,
has not worked for the Rockets, and they've lost many bad games because of it. And I think nothing has changed. And I think part of it is because Udoka and Durant aren't on the same page sometimes. I think that Durant is trying to take over the team, which he is rightfully so.
And he has a reputation of doing that at every stop. And the only team, correct me if I'm wrong, the only team that Kevin Durant won a championship with was the Golden State Warriors, where he wasn't the first in command. He wasn't the second in command. Probably wasn't the third in command. Maybe he was third, but he wasn't one or two. I mean, that's Curry and Kerr, and you can debate that order however you'd like. Maybe Durant, maybe Thompson or Green, I don't know. He wasn't first or second. Won multiple championships. Calling all the shots in Phoenix, calling all the shots in Brooklyn. Now he's calling the shots in Houston.
And
how's it working out for him? It isn't. All right, so that's a very interesting discussion. Game 5 between L.A. and Houston. That's going to be on Wednesday. And all of a sudden, I'm actually looking forward to that game. The first couple, not that compelling. And Houston hadn't shown the necessary fight. And when they did, they were going to choke. So, okay, am I really going to watch that? Game 5 now has my interest a little bit because now we've seen the Rockets play to their abilities. And when they did, it was a convincing victory against L.A. Will it be too little, too late? That's my guess. But time will tell. The Lakers and the Rockets, Game 5 on Wednesday. We got to talk about New York, 2-2 with Atlanta, so we'll bring on Hazi here for sure. Now, the Knicks, they have proven what we already know. And we're going to get into the Knicks conversation. But there's a developing story right now in the NBA happening right in front of us. The Pistons, who had the best record in the East, are down almost double digits in Game 4. It's very early.
12.
They're down 10.
Okay, so they're down roughly 10. Now it's going to, that's not frozen. The score is going to change. But roughly a 10-point game right now in favor of Orlando. If the Magic win, it'll be the Magic who are up 3-1. They'd be the only team that is a higher seed. Well, them in Minnesota. The only team in the East that's a quote-unquote underdog to be up 3-1 and probably would represent a departure from the number 1 seed in the conference. So we're going to keep you updated on that and certainly talk about that series too. But I do want to talk about New York. 2-2 with Atlanta. They proved in Game 4 what we already knew. They're vastly the better team. Their roster is superior. In my opinion, on paper, the Knicks have the best roster in the conference, and that's had pushback from Ethan and others. But I strongly believe that that's true. Now, the results haven't necessarily been there to back it up. Bridges still not producing to the level that you'd like to see. But the one really positive improvement from the regular season that I've noticed, Hazi, is the play of Karl Anthony Towns. And the reason the Knicks lose Game 2 and 3 is they left him. They no longer pounded the rock down low and really involved him in the offense in those final 5 minutes in both games. And they ended up blowing each contest, spending way too much time isolation with Brunson and others in the perimeter and not forcing it down low. The Hawks don't have the size or the girth to properly combat Towns. It's abundantly clear. They don't have the bodies to stop Karl Anthony Towns by the basket, and he dominated them in Game 4. I really strongly hope that Mike Brown and the staff are aware of this, that they're cognizant of that, and that Karl Anthony Towns is injected into Atlanta in a heavy dosage for the remainder of the series.
So here's my thing, David. Karl Anthony Towns to me has always been a better player when he's playing inside out. When you let him get to the paint, when you let him first establish himself as that paint presence,
right?
When he can now start playing himself more on the perimeter. He can start playing himself more in the mid range. The issue with that, and especially with the plays that Mike Brown was calling up in games 2 and 3, was Game 2 he got into a foul trouble a little bit. So you obviously don't want to risk your star getting fouled out with 7 minutes left in the fourth quarter. That I understand. Game 3, though, I really don't know what the issue was, and especially because it felt like when Cat was on the floor, he was just shooting it a lot more. And to me, Cat is better when he's able to just drive, put his head down, and either draw a call or at least just put his body somewhere. And you're absolutely right, David. When the Hawks have no answer for not only Cat, but I think Reggie Miller said it best, and I don't agree with Reggie Miller on much. I don't agree with Reggie Miller on much, but the one thing I do agree with is we significantly outsize the Hawks. So I like the idea of playing a double big lineup. I like the idea of having Cat and Mitchell Robinson on the floor at the same time. Because, yes, I mean, Hack-a-Mitch is always going to be there because the same way Hack-a-Shaq was always going to be there. The issue is at some point you got to stop fouling him.
Well, that's also very context dependent. I mean, there's no Hack-a-Mitch with 9 minutes to go in the second quarter. You know, they're not going to do that. But, yes, you know, he's limited in the flow of the game. All right, so we're going to continue our conversation with the Knicks, but Ethan's in the corner having a stroke right now.
Yeah, because we got
some
great news
Arizona
coming.
breaking news.
Ivan.
This is on the heels of Krivas announcing that he's going to stay.
Well,
Go ahead.
Ivan's also going to stay is what I was going to say. So
I think he goes by Ivan, but that's great news.
Ivan, how do you say his last name? Karchenkov?
Karchenkov. Maybe by next year you'll be able to have it down.
Hopefully, because he's going to be playing for us.
So Karchenkov and Krivas, they're returning Pete and Burries to the draft. And that pretty much settles. I don't know if there's any other. Obviously, Bradley's got more eligibility.
We've
left.
Got one of the best prospects coming in as well. But we don't.
Well, I'm not going to speculate. You could spend all day talking about the portal and NIL and everything, and who's coming. And I'm not smart enough to be able to give you a scouting report on somebody's high school performance. But what I do know is there were 4 question marks, or really 3. No, there were 4. There were 4 about players whether they're going to go to the draft or they're going to come back. And the breakdown is 2 and 2. Burries and Pete to the draft. Krivas and Karchenkov are coming back. You'll take it. That was probably best case scenario, all things considered. You knew Burries and Pete were gone. They're going to be first round choices. So Tommy Lloyd's got to be pleased, and it's a team that's very much relied on international players
and size.
And the 2 guys,
and they got both of them.
The 2 guys that are staying have size, and they're international players. So maybe that's fitting in itself. All right, there's not much more to say on that. We appreciate Ethan for the news update. We'll go back into the Knicks-Hawks series, which is 2-2. We've outlined, and I have a text with somebody a friend of mine from back home who's a big Knicks fan. I don't remember which game. It was one of the games they lost, 2 or 3. And in the third quarter, I had just texted Towns, just Towns, and feed him. And they stopped. You know, and game 4, fortunately, they got back to it. Ethan, can you give us a Karl Anthony Towns stat line in game 4 against the Hawks? Because I know it was really
a triple double. He had 20, 10, and 10.
Yeah, there you go. And that's what it's going to have to be.
In game 3, he had 20. He had 21, 17 rebounds, and 4 assists. But
you're right, but the 21, a lot of it came in the first 3 quarters, and they abandoned him late. They're just not entrusting Towns in the final. I don't even want to say the first 3 quarters because he's doing something at the beginning of the fourth. It's the final 4 minutes. The same part of the game that's really plagued the Rockets hasn't been overly kind to New York either.
From what I've seen from the Knicks in these 4 games, is when it comes down to crunch time, all they do is ISO with Jalen Brunson.
Yeah, you're right, and there's no reason for that. And that's not who they are.
Yeah, and you guys will be dominating through the first 3 quarters.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden the ball movement stops.
Yeah.
Why?
I couldn't tell you. It's a great question. I think it's – so I'm going to give you an analogy here if you can believe that. It might be very surprising.
Uh-oh.
So anybody who plays golf is really going to relate to this. I think this is some reason why, okay? So if you have a golf swing, and let's say you take a lesson, right? And your instructor says, okay, your swing isn't bad, but you've got 2 adjustments that you need to make if you're going to play better, okay? You need to make these 2 adjustments. Now, it's difficult to really get through to your body and to break that relationship between your brain and your actual physical movements, but it can be done, right? But under instances of severe stress and pressure, it will deviate, and you're actually going to go back to those old habits. So you can break them. You can do what the instructor is telling you and start to swing better and play better. But odds are, under the pressure of, say, a tournament, or maybe you've got a putt or a shot with a lot of money on the line, you're going to revert back to those instincts because that's the way muscle memory works. It's going to go back to comfortable ways, even if they're years old, under times of pressure. And that's really what the Knicks have done. For some reason, their default setting, when they're applied a great deal of pressure, they go to Jalen Brunson ISO. They don't move the ball as well, and it's very stagnant. And I'm not exactly sure why that is their default setting, but it's abundantly clear that it is because time after time in a close game, that's what we see. So I would really relate it to a golfer who's trying to make swing changes, who's trying to do things differently, but when under pressure, going back to those old habits that aren't necessarily good and that you're trying to get away from, but you can't quite help it.
I like the analogy. I'm not a golfer, but you are, so it makes sense why you would come up with that. I mean, I have a few questions on why it kind of naturally happens. I just think that you guys play so well. Why would it ever change?
Well, it's the pressure. I mean, that's exactly what I'm telling you. It's there.
So you're under pressure. So it's only when you're under pressure.
Yeah, it is. When you watch them play, it's the first 40 minutes, the first 45 minutes. They're not doing this, and when the pressure is really ramped up in these key situations, it's not pretty. And the other time you really see it, Ethan, is at the very end of quarters when they have the last shot or whatever. It's horrible to watch. It's repulsive. They don't get good looks, and sometimes don't even get shots off at all, because that's just kind of their default setting, like I said. And they've got to make the improvements. They've got to drill it through in practice to continue to play that way. And I don't know if there's so many teams we're seeing on tape that are making it easier for them to force the Knicks into playing that way. But you can't deny the trend, which is at these critical moments, that's when the ISO ugly basketball comes out.
Yeah, and to agree with you on that, David. Like, I don't know if you saw. Well, we watched the end of Game 3 together. When the end of Game 3 is like essentially happening, there's no movement. There's nobody moving. There's no screens being set. It's just give the ball to Jalen Brunson. Everybody else get out the way. And the issue is when teams know who you're going to go to, and like you're not doing anything else, at least around it or like I guess above it, to make other plays happen, or at least set up somebody else who they might not think of to take this last shot. It's easy to defend, and you saw it at the end of Game 3. And to put it like this, David, the Hawks have won Games 3 and 2 by a combined margin of 2 points. The Knicks won Game 1, I believe, by 13, and I believe Game 4 was 20.
Almost 20, yeah, 16 points, I think.
So the Knicks have a combined win total of 29 points.
Yeah.
But the issue is when you get deeper into the playoffs and stuff like that. And I mean, you saw it last year when we were a better team last year. Actually, when we played closer games, when the series with Boston, when Boston would sit there and hit us with a counterpunch, we'd counterpunch right back. A lot of the series with Indiana, except for that Game 6, when they would hit us, we'd hit right back. So to me, we got to get back to, and again, I know the coaches are different. It was Tibbs compared to Mike Brown, and I get that, but the ball has to keep moving. We cannot just sit there and be like, oh, it's going to go to Brunson or it's going to go to Cat, and then let them ISO, because obviously this hasn't worked. So, I mean, maybe play the pick and roll game, maybe play the pick and then the cut, and then somebody's cutting behind it, but just have somebody else moving so that there's somebody else the defense has to look at besides Jalen Brunson.
I completely agree with you. And everybody who's watching, it's abundantly clear that this is how they have to play. And I am confident, like I said, it was a dominating victory, Game 4, and it would be shocking to me if on the heels of that, they go to the Garden for Game 5 and are unable to deliver. And if the Knicks do go up 3-2, it'd be tough to see them losing that series. So they seem to be in a good spot, and certainly they need to perform in Game 5. I do want to give a lot of credit to C.J. McCollum, because for a 34-year-old, I was mentioning LeBron, who's in his 40s. C.J. McCollum has played maybe the best basketball of his career in this 4-game stretch against the Knicks. Now, New York defensively, I thought played great, and we can highlight the offense and the ball movement and the spacing. But, Ethan, if you wouldn't mind telling me how many turnovers Detroit had there in Game 4, it was a huge number, and you find that in team stats. But they had a lot of turnovers. It was all because of the Knicks defense. The Knicks defense was outstanding. What was
19.
Yeah, 19 is an astounding number. And C.J. McCollum, they neutralized him a lot better than earlier games. But that said, the first 3 games, McCollum was outstanding. I mean, the first half of Game 3, he didn't miss. And it didn't matter the difficulty, who was in his face, who was guarding him. Those all were immaterial because he shot the ball incredibly well. And he's the reason the series is 2-2. There's some other players on Atlanta that you had been talking about all season, and guys that had really improved, young players, and they haven't quite delivered for the Hawks. But McCollum has closed the gap and made up for it pretty much on his own. So I do want to give credit to him, but also credit to the Knicks defense for the performance they had, forcing 19 turnovers against Atlanta in Game 4. All right, I think we're in a good spot on the Knicks-Hawks series. The next one I want to get to, and then we'll get into our baseball discussion. And I also very briefly want to talk about how much I enjoyed the Canadiens game yesterday, Game 4, and that entire series with the Tampa Bay Lightning. But let's go with the Magic and the Pistons, because I was very interested when Hazi and I took a look at the odds As it looks like now it's a 1-point game. I just saw from a distance. What does that say? What's that score say?
21-22.
Okay, yeah, 1-point game.
Magic.
So we were very interested to see the odds at the beginning of the postseason, Ethan, that said Eastern Conference, number 1 most likely team to win the East, Boston. Number 2, Cleveland, which I still can't understand, and I didn't in the moment. Number 3, New York. Number 4, Detroit. Now, we knew Cunningham had some shortcomings, an injury with the collapsed lung, but he's been playing. I mean, he's been playing, and whether or not he's fully healthy, you'd have to ask him, and he probably wouldn't tell you. But he's playing. And Detroit, they look like the 4th most likely team to win the conference, which I'm surprised by. The Magic have been a tough matchup for Detroit. They're a very physical team. They're taking it to them. It's been a really gritty, grinded-out series, which has been fun to watch. But it's surprising to see the Pistons are not in a good position. And unfortunately for Detroit, they're the number 1 seed. And the 2 top teams, 5 to 8, were Orlando and Atlanta. And they drew Orlando. The Magic, the reason they're the number, you might be saying, well, how can the Magic be so good if they were a play-in team? Well, they were injured all season. They weren't fully healthy. And they're fully healthy right now. And they're proving that they're a pretty solid team. You have to remember, going into the season, over the summer, people were talking about the Magic as one of the favorites to really win the conference. And at a minimum, Orlando was going to make this big jump. And they've made the jump here in the playoffs. They didn't make it in the regular season. They're not a bad team. Healthy. They're giving Detroit a run for their money.
Yeah, I think they're not a bad team, and I think part of it is because of their size. They've got guys that can play 1 through 4. 4 guys that can play 1 through 4 with Boncaro, Franz, Bane, and Wendell Carter, who can shoot a bit. So I do think when they're healthy and they've got a full team and they're ready to go against the Pistons, they can do some damage, and I think they're going to do some damage in the next round too. I think it's.
You think they're going to get by Detroit? I mean, it's only 2-1 right now. They haven't won game 4 yet.
Detroit just hasn't been anything special as of late, and they weren't anything special last year against the Knicks.
Yeah, the draw most likely will be Cleveland. Of course, the Cavs are 2-2 with Toronto. Now, I don't think Toronto's going to get by the Cavs, but should they, the Magic probably would be the favorite against the Raptors, and that would be interesting.
Yeah, I
don't think anybody has the Magic going to the final, the Eastern Conference final.
Yeah, that would definitely be an interesting look. I think the Magic... I think they've done some damage here. I think they've made a name for themselves. I mean, Desmond Bane has been shooting the lights out for them. He hit 7 threes in Game 3. And I think that's part of the reason why they made that trade for him. I think they've, as you mentioned earlier, they have had injuries all season, and there's a reason why they only had 40-something wins, 45 I want to say. Yeah, 45 and 37. Which isn't what their expectations were at all. They were supposed to be one of the top teams in the East after making that Bane trade. But they've ultimately looked like a much better team than they had all year. And I do think they have a real shot against Detroit here. But, I mean, Detroit, they just haven't looked that good. What do you think?
Honestly, I'm with you on that, Ethan, and I think now I might change the stance that me and Dave had made previously, which was that Detroit would get past Cleveland in 5 games if they were to get past this point. Because and here's my thing, I think the East is so open this year that it's just maybe besides the Boston series, I think anybody can prove that on any given day they can shoot the lights out, and all of a sudden now things are changing. And especially because, Orlando hasn't, like David said, Orlando hasn't been healthy the whole year, but even when they haven't been a bad team. They've just been, unfortunately, hit with the injury bug, and everybody gets hit with it, but it's about when you choose to step up the most. And they're healthy right now, but they're also just, everybody seems to be, it's not just Paolo Banchero, it's Jalen Suggs, it's Wendell Carter, it's Desmond Bane, it's pretty much their whole starting lineup, plus dudes like Anthony Black, who are really just giving Detroit fits. And the issue with Detroit is, and we kind of saw this last year, they have a potential to be a dominant team, and especially when the ball gets moving, and especially when they're in the paint, and there are nights where Cade just can't miss. But when it comes down to the nit-grit and, when it matters most, they don't seem to at least step up for four straight quarters.
I think part of the reason why Orlando's been playing so well is because they came in with the game plan that we're going to let Cade do everything and we're going to shut down everyone else. The reason why the Pistons were so good through this year is because Cade got everyone involved. He's getting Harris involved. He's getting Duran involved. Yep. Everyone's playing well for the Pistons, meaning Cade has to do less. But now when you've got the size to match up with that team, like the Magic do, they're going to shut down Duran. They're going to shut down Harris. Asar Thompson can't shoot. So it's Cade doing it all. He's a one-man show, and that's why the Magic are outscoring them. Cade had 40, and they lost because they can't do anything because the Magic are playing great defense on them and just letting Cade run around and shoot threes. They're playing team basketball. They're just playing a better brand of basketball. I think that's a big reason to why Detroit is losing the series. Dave, any thoughts?
Well, I don't necessarily disagree. I want to caution us against one thing, and that's the tendency on this show and others, not so much by me, to overreact, right? So when we overreact, what did we see last is the most important thing. Well, we saw 82 games of the Pistons being a pretty darn good team, and they have been, fatigued and off these first three. I ultimately do think they'll get past the Magic. And by the way, have the Cavaliers really inspired anybody in their first 4 games against the Raptors, who are the weakest team alive in the Eastern Conference? They haven't. So you going to tell me Detroit's not going to beat Cleveland? I would take the Pistons right now over the Cavaliers as poorly as they're playing. So I still have them going where I said they would. You have to remember, I predicted the winner of the New York-Boston series would win the conference. I think they're the best 2. And I do think it's going to be the Knicks. Now, that remains to be seen. I think the Knicks-Celtics series is going to be really, really of the highest quality and will be the Eastern Conference final. But the Pistons, just because they're down 2-1 against Orlando, who's given them their best punch, they're not done yet. And the Cavaliers, their next opponent, has not really impressed me either. So, I'm not quick to say that they're done. Cade Cunningham is a superstar, right? And if he's going to be fully healthy, which I'm not sure we've seen that, I do think he's good enough to get this team past Cleveland. They also play great defense, and they do have size and toughness. You can't put a price tag on that. So there are reasons that the Pistons are good, and where they got is not a miracle. They won 60 games, or almost. What was their record in the regular season, Ethan? Do you have that close by? Okay, so 60-22. So come on, I mean they're not a bad team, and Cunningham's a great player. So I think we haven't seen the best of them yet.
And again, this isn't. I'm not fully changing it because I still think the Pistons win. But again, we had the Pistons winning, and I believe
seems ambitious now, yeah.
Not necessarily like they get like we had the Pistons creaming Cleveland. Which, to be fair, Cleveland hasn't been that impressive either. But the one thing that Cleveland I think has done at least better than Detroit, especially in these playoffs, and yes, Cleveland is playing arguably the weakest team in the East, but Cleveland's just been able to have the ability to pull away down the stretch of a game. Now, the thing with Detroit is they pulled away a bit at the end of game 2, but besides that, when it does get close and when it comes to crunch time stuff, I mean, you saw it last year with the Knicks. They do tend to struggle at least putting up the closing numbers to at least put another win in the win column and getting them closer to the next series.
No, you're right. And so we'll see the Pistons. It was a gritty series last year against New York in the first round, and we all came away saying, wow, this team next year, look out. They're going to be dangerous, and they did very well against the top teams in the East in the regular season. So I maintain we haven't seen the best of them yet. All right, I teased at the beginning of the show that the MLB season has had some surprises and some things that we're not, maybe fully expecting that we're seeing. So I'm going to open it up to Ethan and Hazi here to really facilitate this discourse. I have a couple of questions, and I'll chime in after they answer them, but I want to hear what they have to say. So is there one team in the American League, and I want you both to take a stab at this, that you're most surprised to see struggling? And now I'll give you some options. Yeah, one team that you're surprised to see struggling.
Well, yeah.
I'll give you some options. You've got the Blue Jays won the league last year, won the American League. They're 12-15. Boston was a playoff team. They're 11-17. The Royals, who have a lot of young talent, are 11-17.
And Seattle's in that list too. And
Seattle's
Houston,
roughly 500. The Astros are 11-18. So who are you most surprised to see down there in the basement, and who has the best chance to pick themselves up by the bootstraps and figure it out?
It has to be the Astros and the Red Sox, in my opinion. The Red Sox haven't been able to hit at all. They
have
been
no
about
power
30
hitting.
games.
Yeah,
they have zero power. They strike out a ton. Their pitching is all right, and Crochet's had struggles here and there this season, which is very unlike him, but he's been good as of late. They just can't hit the ball whatsoever right now, and it's been about 30 games. You have to be thinking that maybe this is a power missing thing, or maybe this is just the team that they've built. But they're definitely at the top of my list because they were expected to win the AL East with all their young stars and Roman Anthony and Trevor Story having a renaissance to his career, and Jarren Duran being a great hitter. They were expected to be at the top of the AL East, and they're at the bottom. On the other hand, you have the Astros, who have the complete opposite team. The Astros have scored the most runs in baseball. They have the highest batting average in baseball. They've been the best hitting team in baseball. They have the most bases in baseball. So they've been the best hitting team in baseball, yet they have only 11 wins because they can't pitch. They have an average ERA of 6, which if you look at teams that have had that in the past, none of them have been over 70 wins. And that's a big reason for why the Astros have struggled, and I think they're the most I'm going to have to go with a tie, Dave. I can't pick between them just because they were they had such high expectations in the beginning of the year, and now they've started out the year so poorly. And then the Red Sox fired their manager,
that's where I
and
wanted
they
to go
cleaned
next.
house, and the Astros are just like it's a mess all around for Boston and Houston.
That's where I wanted to take this conversation. So you're one step ahead of me. So shout out for that. So the Red Sox they had just beaten Baltimore the second game of that series. They were about to have a rubber match on Sunday, one that they ultimately won, and they fire Alex Cora, who I think is a really strong manager, and I think any team is going to pick him up, in the near future,
and be very happy with it.
It could be Houston by the end of the year if things don't get turned around with the Astros. They're going to be very happy to have him. So I think it's an odd choice. Look, the Red Sox lineup, it's all about balance to me in baseball. The Yankees oftentimes are
too powerful.
They're not balanced. They have too many sluggers, not enough contact hitters. The Red Sox have too many contact hitters. Where's the power? They don't have any sluggers. So I think that they're lacking some power over the top, and their pitchers just had to sort through some things. It's early in the season. I can't believe you'd make a move this soon. And the other thing that I can't understand is the scale of the decision. It's not Alex Cora who got fired. It's the entire staff. Everyone in the dugout's gone, and now the Red Sox are being managed by somebody who was managing the Woo Sox in AAA. So is that really who would have been their choice coming into the year if they had their pick of the litter? Terry Francona, their former manager, just came out of retirement to go to Cincinnati. So if you really weren't sure if Alex Cora was the guy, and it only took 27 games for you to fire him, maybe you should have went out there and gotten Francona at the beginning of the year rather than being stuck with a guy from AAA who may be the next great manager in baseball. But I'm pretty sure he wouldn't have been the Red Sox top choice had they made this move in November. And so that's what I don't understand. If you're going to be this impatient with him and this unsure of him as your leader, why even go into the year with him at all? Again, and I think he's being scapegoated. This is a Red Sox organization that's not investing in the team like they used to. The complexion of their team isn't, desirable at all. Their homegrown talent has left, and it's early. I can't understand the move. I'm sure you guys agree, but I'd like to hear your thoughts, Ethan and Hazi, for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely way too early for a move in a baseball season. Not even 30 games in. You're not even a quarter of the way into the season.
We're not even a full month into the season yet.
That's like saying week 4 we're gonna fire Aaron Glenn. Week 4, the Jets are 1-3, and week 4 he's done. We got a whole 3/4 of a season, and we don't have a head coach anymore.
Well, by the way, they did fire Robert Saleh a few years ago. I think it was about 5 games in. With the Aaron Rodgers season, I think they were 2-3, and they fired him. So you're not that far off.
But and my biggest thing with this is, David, I'm with you on this. To me, the biggest thing with the Red Sox is there's so many great, they have great contact guys, but, the issue is there's not enough power built up on this team. And that's obviously, the opposite case with the Astros, where there's power, there's contact, but there's no pitching. And to me, the Red Sox have at least okay enough pitchers to where if they had the power to at least, hit home runs consistently, we wouldn't even be talking about Alex Cora and his whole slot being on. And I just don't like doing it this early in the year. If it's June and the Red Sox still have 11 wins, fine. But you're 11-17. You're not terribly in the basement. You're only about, I believe, 7 games back from first place. It's April. Most teams are going to lose in April. The Pirates are in first place right now in the National League. I don't think that's going to stand come August, September. So to me, it's really odd. And again, this is coming from somebody who cheers for the rival team. I liked Alex Cora a lot. I think he did a lot for the organization, and especially with the team that they had last year. Yes, they had better pieces last year, but with the injuries that they had, with everything that they had going on, to still just make the wild card and, again, give that Yankees team a run for their money is, I think, no short feat.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree with you. I kind of want to talk about, rather than just start Alex Cora, the Red Sox and their organization as a whole, because 2017, you're in the ALDS against the Astros. 2018, you're in the ALCS. You win the World Series. 2019, you go to the playoffs. 2020, same thing. 2021, ALCS. We're talking about the Red Sox, Dave, and they're past.
For some odd reason, you blow it up.
Oh, yeah, I completely forgot to mention. You win the World Series and you trade your best player. Mookie Betts goes to the Dodgers. And then a few years later, you go to the ALCS. Next year, Rafael Devers gone. So it's been more of a selling organization, and they signed Bregman, which was their big move, but then they let him go a year later.
And now he's on the Cubs.
Mm-hmm. So you've done nothing to improve your organization, and in my opinion, in baseball, if you're not getting better, you're getting worse. If you're not investing in your team, if you're not investing in your bullpen, whatever it could be, in your lineup, power. If you need contact, you go get contact. If you're not getting better, you're getting worse because other teams are getting better and other teams are developing players and signing players. So it's been a struggle for the Red Sox here. It's been a struggle for the Astros. Anyway, Dave, I want to hear your thoughts on who you think has been the worst team or the most.
Well, I think Boston. I think you're right. It's between Boston and Houston. But look, I mean, Kansas City being at the bottom of the Central that's a surprise. I mean, there's no two ways around that. Mm-hmm. And the Blue Jays were in the World Series last year. They really should have won the World Series. They were basically one play away in Game 6, and they lost. And they're 12-15, so they've been underwhelming too. Boston is really peculiar because they should be a big market team. You expect them to be a blue chip. But since that you guys were spot on. Since the 2018 championship, it's been kind of smoke and mirrors. They've had a couple of good seasons. But if you actually go through and look from 2018 on, there's been a lot of last place finishes since then. And the Red Sox, they really just haven't. The moment they traded Mookie Betts, there's kind of been this organizational. There's been some last place teams. You go back and look.
The Red Sox?
Yeah.
2021 ALCS.
That was a standout. That was a exception. That was kind of a fluke run, to be honest. Go ahead and Google it. You have the internet at your full disposal.
They made it 19.
I'm not sure they made it in 19 and 20. I don't remember that.
The Astros played them in 19.
Okay. Don't be so sure. We'll keep it moving, and then we'll get the Google search.
Keep it moving. I'll bring this back up.
So the Red Sox have been. Go ahead and pull it up. The Red Sox have been a disappointment for a while, but their struggles this year have been surprising. The Astros probably more surprising though, because they to me were the favorite in the West, and they have not gotten it done. Do you have the most recent years there, Ethan?
Yeah. So they last year, of course. Then 2021 was the one before that.
That's what I said. Yeah.
And then a few years in between. 2020 was a throwaway year, but they weren't bad.
Well, read their records.
Years.
Read their records.
They weren't good
2019,
at all.
they didn't make the playoffs. I don't remember them making the playoffs.
84-78.
That didn't get in.
Then 78-84 in back-to-back years.
78 and 84 in the AL East. That's basically last place.
That's not good at all.
Because that's a good division.
And then they were 524.
Yeah, missed. So they missed the playoffs all those years, like I said. So that 21.
So that definitely has to have a reason for why they fired Cora, because it's been countless years.
But they haven't been good.
Right.
I mean, what do you want the manager to do? He doesn't
I'm
play.
agreeing with you. I'm agreeing with you. They weren't playing well through those years. I thought they were much better than they were.
No, they really weren't. That's what I was trying to say.
And to me, my thing with Alex Cora is, what do you want him to do when you keep trading away his superstars? You bring in Mookie, Mookie's gone. You bring in Bregman, Bregman's gone. You bring in Rafael Devers, Devers is gone.
Well, not bring them in. Here's the one I would just change. They're homegrown players.
Like
these are your guys. I mean, Bogart's gone, and he's been disappointing with San Diego. Bogarts is a homegrown Sox. Betts is a homegrown Red Sox. Devers is a homegrown Red Sox. Let them all go. And the only one they quote unquote brought in, there were two of them. Two guys that they brought in. One of them is Bregman. The other one's Kyle Schwarber. And how's Schwarber working out for the Phillies?
And Garrett
Crochet they brought in, but they've kept him. But that's a long-term contract, so that's a little bit. We're mostly talking about Harris.
The Phillies are a disappointing team as well. They have not been good at all.
And I was going to get into that too. So let's go. Let's go in
do
that
the
direction.
NL.
So in the National League, really, it's just the East.
Yeah,
the Mets.
It's just the East.
Mets and the Phillies.
Yeah, the two teams that
the two favorites.
Everybody thought were going to be so good this year. The Mets, Juan Soto, Lindor. We have second most money spent in baseball.
Yeah.
Garbage. The Phillies are in the same situation I think the Red Sox are, where they just keep their players. They haven't spent anything over the past few years. The last player they brought in was Bryce
Kyle
Harper.
Schwarber, right?
Yeah, but the last player they brought in was Bryce Harper.
They're spending a little more than Boston. You're not totally wrong.
The other issue with the the other issue with the Phillies though is that the Phillies are just getting up there. They're an extremely I don't want to say extremely. They're a team that's getting old. Bryce Harper isn't getting younger. Neither is Schwarber. Neither I believe I think the dude that they traded away, the one
Wheeler's getting old.
Castellanos, but they traded Castellanos to the Padres. But I think the issue with the Phillies is just like again they're a team that is getting older. So like when do you start to think? Not necessarily blow it all up, but okay, we can trade some of these older pieces who are still going to be good on other teams to get some younger talent in. And you might be bad for a couple of years because, again, younger talent has to develop and grow and, fit the system. But I think since the 22 year where they made the World Series, I mean, they keep going back to the playoffs. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That team is always gonna be great enough to keep going back to the playoffs. But it's can they get over that hump? Because since the World Series year, I believe it's been DS exits each year. So to me, it's just. And then the issue with the Mets is I just feel like there's something going on. I feel like there has to be something going on internally in the clubhouse. And yes, the Pete Alonso trade does have a lot to do with it. Like losing a dude who was a premier home run hitter affects any team. But like I still feel like they should be a lot better than what they're producing right now.
Well, part of it was Juan Soto got hurt, and that's a huge part of it. I mean, one of the best hitters in baseball, if not the best hitter, goes down. And it ruins all your chemistry that you built up. They were good before they went on that 12-game win streak. They were above 500. Lose streak, sorry. They lost 12 games in a row. And at that point, it starts to get to you mentally. So that win that they had probably felt really good for the clubhouse. And I do think they're going to get back on track here. But I want to talk a little bit about the biggest standouts. And I want to hear who you guys have seen play well. Because we've talked a lot about these teams that have played poorly. So who's played well for you guys?
So for me, are we just talking about league in general? Or are we talking NL, AL?
League. Do league. Who's your biggest standout from this year? Who's been better?
To me, I mean, you can go the whole NL Central, but like the best I've really seen so far. And again, these are the games that I've watched of this team. I really like watching the Cubs this year. And to me, there's finally been that balance of because PCA is great defensively. But, like, offensively, at times, he can be a liability. Then you bring in dudes like Bregman, though, who can, pick up the slack where PCA is just not there. And, again, I mean, they did just lose the series to the Dodgers. I get that. But they did take a game where they were down 4-0, bottom 7, heading into the last 3 innings of the game. And they won that game, I believe, 8-4, 8-3. So I really like watching the Cubs this year. And just another team that I really think is, fun to watch. Maybe not the best, but like definitely fun to watch are the A's. And for a team that again has so much going on, where you're moving from Oakland and now you're in Sacramento, and now it's probably everybody comes into this year thinking it's going to be another throwaway year before you get to Vegas. And the A's are doing what the A's are doing. I think that's really something great to see, and also just better for the game.
Yeah, the thing with the A's is it's kind of similar to the Astros. It's just been better than the Astros. They've hit the ball fantastic this year, and they have an awesome lineup with Soderstrom, Kurtz, and all of their other guys. Their pitching needs to come along a little more, which is why they've lost some games. But I do have to agree with you. I think the A's have been great. I also think the Angels, who have slipped a little bit, have also been
The
good.
Angels being 500 is like being 30 games above. I mean, it's a miracle. And Mike Trout being healthy has been great for the game.
That's a miracle as well.
That is also a miracle. The A's have been, I feel like they've been trending in the right direction quietly the last few years. They were awful when they were playing in Oakland, but last year they really weren't that bad and showed some offensive power, and they've gone in the right direction. Now, just to piggyback off Hazi's point, the Cubs to me is the answer too. I agree with you, Haz. They had a 10-game stretch where they were 10-0 against the Phillies, the Mets, and the Dodgers. That's pretty exceptional. Now, obviously the Phillies and the Mets aren't playing well, but part of that's because they got roughed up by the Cubs, and those are teams that at the end of the day you have to think will be in the playoffs in the National League, and they beat them all 10 consecutive. It was bookended by some losses, but that was a really promising stretch for Chicago. They're at the top there, or toward the top in that really strong Central Division. The Reds, another young team that you have to be bullish about. Look, it's really murky in the NL. There's going to be 6 teams that make it. There's going to be 9 that don't. you'd be hard pressed to tell me which 6 are going and which 9 aren't, because there's more than 6 good teams right now, and some of those teams in the 9 out you think are going to be in based on their roster and what we thought in the
100%.
offseason. So the National League's a bit of a mess, and I don't think it's going to be that much clearer come September.
And then to also add on to your point about the Reds, David, I saw this thing yesterday as I'm watching the Royals game, and the thing was the Reds win 67% of the time when Ellie De La Cruz steals a base, which. And again, not to say like that the Reds' whole season depends on how great Ellie De La Cruz can steal a base, but just like the impact of Ellie De La Cruz, not only just on like that organization, but to me on that city, because like again for years to me the Reds had just kind of been like a team that's there, like, you know, they weren't bottom of the barrel, but like they were like middle pack. To me, with an Ellie De La Cruz, like, when you're winning 67, when all you need 67% of the time is just for him to steal one base a game to win a game, that's huge. Because, and especially in an NL Central that this year seems to be going to be so congested and packed. Because, even the Pirates got off to a great start. And again, we're only in April, so I know not to put any horses in a bunch yet. But when you have an NL Central that is looking to be really great this year, you have to think, okay, well, if all we need is him to steal a base a game to win a game.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little bit of a gimmick, Hazi, but I appreciate you bringing it to our attention. That was an enjoyable show. I appreciate you guys helping me get through it and providing some of the substance, because it was a little bit of a grind on this end, but you guys picked up the load well. I think come August and September that Ellie De La Cruz stat may not hold as true, but it's a fun little thing to talk about. So we thank you so much for listening to the Rundown. We'll be back on Friday morning with more to say. Maybe the conclusion of the Rocket series. Ethan hopes not, but we'll see. But we're going to have a lot more clarity on everything in the NBA, NHL playoffs. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you Friday.